Hey everyone, I've got Amar here with me today. I'm so excited. I've never done a live interview before, so I hope you guys are all patient and generous with us. He is such a cool writer. I mean, Amar, you just a live interview. Oh, I'm coming through. Just got some back there. All right, close that window. I'm gonna carry on as is. Yeah, such a writer. You started writing like 8 months ago now, January of 2020, and then last month you made an unbelievable amount of money. But more than the money, you've been published in Forge. You're already an editor of Entrepreneur's Handbook, and as someone who tries to help other people find their footing on Medium, you're proof that beginners really, really can start and then half a year later have literally life-changing amounts of money and really making an impact with the written word. So yeah, tell me a little bit about what made you want to start writing on Medium and how have you found your journey so far?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me, Zuli, by the way. So I originally just started reading on Medium. I had no intention at all of being a writer. I know some people used to be writers and sell kids. I know you did, for example. As for me, it was never really something on my radar. But I used to read a lot. And then when you're reading all the time, then it's like, oh, wait, you read something, it's like, oh, I've got an idea that's similar to this, but I disagree with what they're saying. Let me try it out. Let's see how it goes. I was like, nobody's ever going to read my stuff, but maybe it'll just be interesting just for me to kind of get my thoughts together, a fun way to do it. Because I read so much, it was an idea of, let's see if I can do it myself, more interesting things I can come up with. And my second article just took off, and then it completely changed the way I looked at everything. Because I thought, maybe one day I'll get to $100 a month, and maybe I can get into that a little bit. And it kind of happened very quickly for me. So I had to try and play catch up because I was like, okay, this has been successful, but I don't know how I did it.
Yeah, so you immediately saw the potential.
Yeah.
And then just had to figure out how to keep it going. Yeah, that's great. By the way, I forgot to say at the start of the video, the format I have for this is I've got a couple of questions prepared for Amar, but I want to leave time at the end because this is a live interview for you to ask questions to him as well. So if you stick 15, 20 minutes, depending on how long the interview takes, you'll have the chance to ask him questions yourself. So stick to the end and yeah, have a bit more of an interactive format for that. Yeah, so I think what I want to know is what was that second article? What did you write it about? How did you come up with it? And what were the results?
So the second article, my first article is now deleted. So it looks like it's my first article. Because my first article wasn't very good. I didn't really know what I was doing. So I was like, let me just do something. So the second one is the 4 Japanese concepts to transform your mind. And the inspiration came from, I did karate for about 12 years. Karate? Something I learned about during that.
Yeah.
And I think it was just on Instagram, I was scrolling through and I saw somebody post a picture about an inspirational quote. I was like, oh, that'd be a really interesting listicle because I don't think anybody's done that before. And then I kind of looked around in Medium, tried to find it elsewhere, and I was like, oh, nobody's written about this before. And I think it's a really cool concept that people would be interested in. And it took me ages to write. It took me about 2 weeks to write because
2 weeks. Wow.
Because I didn't know what I was doing, so it was I would write a little bit and then be like, no, that's not really that good. So I kind of kept procrastinating. And then when it went live, then it was a few days later, all of a sudden, just blew up. I was like, oh, okay. Didn't expect that.
You never do. So, okay, it sounds like then this was part of your whole journey, right? You met yourself as a writer, you got inspired by seeing content someone else had created, and you're like, I've never seen this. I don't think this has been done. And then you took that opportunity and spent 2 weeks, which so much of the advice on Medium is write every day. So that is so contrary to a lot of what other people have heard so far. 2 weeks to write an article, slow growth and sudden takeoff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is unbelievable. That's what we all hope for.
I knew about the concepts, but I knew about them in a way that was kind of, I learned about it from karate, so I didn't learn about it from the internet, I guess.
Right, yeah, so you had a more organic, you hadn't read content, you'd actually experienced it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that helped it a lot because in the introduction I talk about my background. I think that's quite important in Medium stories, where if you can bring some of your own life into it, it stops it from being a story that anybody could write.
Yeah, this is actually, I wanted to ask you, so many people try to do what you've done, right? Like get to $4,000 a month in half a year. And so many people try it, and you're one of the few that succeed. What characteristics do you think, whether in your writing or your background, personal life, have let you actually achieve that?
Yeah, so one of the things I think I've mentioned to you before is like, I think it took me 28 years to become an overnight success, because it's not like, I think some people, they practice writing, but they don't think about what parts of their life are interesting, and that's the bit that actually captures readers. Because like in my day job, one thing I do is quite complicated, so it's quite technical and quite detailed.
Right.
But then I'm often talking to people who don't have that background. So what I need to do is try to convert that quite complex information to something that everybody can talk about and everybody can understand easily. And that's pretty much what I do in my writing. So it's taking these ideas that are quite abstract and people might not understand, and try to put them in everyday language. So I think that's helped a lot. And it's about talking, because I talk about these things and I talk how I write.
Yeah.
So it's kind of helped. Like, I'm not somebody who's trained to be a writer or like 20 years learning how to do it. It's just I talk a lot and I kind of write how I talk.
Yeah, that's one of the things that one of the things I love about Medium actually is and blogging in general is I feel like it's a very conversational, and it sounds like that's kind of what you do when you write. And I've read your writing obviously, and when I read it, it doesn't sound like you're like lecturing me. It sounds like we're having a conversation, and your part is just, you know, long in an article format. But no, I really empathize with that, and I think that's, yeah, as from an outside perspective, that's something that I don't see that much on Medium. So if you had to summarize kind of what you just said, like if somebody else wanted to do what you were doing, what would be like your 3 takeaway top tips?
I think the first thing is to,
or any member yourself.
I think it's like not rushing is one big thing, because I think people try to write an article every single day, but they're not comfortable in what they're doing yet, and then they're wondering why they're not seeing success. But it's about like, is each article something which you'd be proud, something you're proud of, or is it just something just trying to get out there just to meet a deadline that you just arbitrarily set? Like, if you look through my writing, I don't really have a pattern. So it's recently been 1 or 2 articles a week, but sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 1, sometimes I don't write anything at all. Like, if an idea is good and it takes a little bit longer, then take the time over it. You don't need to rush.
Yeah.
That's one thing. I think another one would be just to be curious. Like, if you're constantly consuming content which is interesting and that makes you think, then you're going to have good ideas, because what you can do is you can take 2 conflicting ideas from different places and make your own theory out of it. So say you've seen some kind of documentary, or you've had a chat with a friend about a deep, like, life chat with them. And so I do this on my stories where it's triggered by my friends, because they've been talking about something, and maybe something's not going right in their life. And it's kind of the advice I've given them, or the chats we've had, that then morph into a story. So talk to people, like engage, like make sure that you're not just siloed, because that's not interesting. Like, you need to have a life around it.
Yeah.
And then the final thing I think is being friendly with people. So at the beginning, I was super excited about everything. So every single person that clapped, I followed them back straight away. And as it's growing, it's getting harder and harder to do that. And like, I get messages and sometimes can't always reply. And it's something I've had to adapt to. But if you found somebody's work interesting, then write a comment that's actually shown that you've read it, because people might just write, "Thank you, great read, I loved it." And that's great, like, it makes you feel good. But some people write a comment where it's like they've understood it and they've come back with an idea that's built on top of it, and that's interesting. And if you can do that, then you really connect with people. Everybody will say thank you, or everybody say, "Can you help me?" But if you're adding something to the writer's life, and if you're adding something to other writers, then that starts building the relationships. And if you're doing it without the intention of, "Can you do this for me?" that always helps as well. Because I think most of the best relations I've had in Medium, it's just because I was just interested in what they were doing. But I never said, "Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do this?" Because that turns people off, because it feels like you're just being used.
Sorry, I lost internet there for a second and I missed half of that. Could you repeat that for me?
Yeah, sure. So what did I say?
Talking about the importance of building relationships?
Yeah. So I was saying, the best way to build a relationship is not having something you want out of it. So if you're just really interested in somebody and what they're writing about, what they're doing, in that way you're nerding out on the actual content rather than like, can you read my draft? Can you do this?
Yeah.
If you're engaging with people like that, they'll want to help you. And it's the same with me. If somebody is engaging with me and they're not just like kind of being like, hi, you're a great writer, please help me. Then I'm more likely to help them because I'm like, oh yeah, they've got interesting ideas and they've like show me what, like people show each other what they're interested in.
I think relationship building on Medium is one of these really underrated tricks of the trade, right? Like, I hate to say it, but knowing the right people and building those relationships with the folks who are already being really successful on the platform is one of the contributions to success, I think. And obviously you're an editor for the Entrepreneur's Handbook, which is a publication I love writing for. So quick shout out if you have any interest in entrepreneurship and like to write about it. Amar's the guy to talk to. And so how did you get that position? And like, do you think that helps you in your career on Medium?
Yes, I think I got it was early July now.
Yeah.
And it was completely unexpected. I didn't like plan it, or I wasn't like trying to angle my way and worm my way into becoming the editor. It was just one of the other editors. I was like I said, like he was writing amazing stuff. It's Mike Thompson, and I enjoyed reading his stuff. Like I love reading his stuff. And when he sent me something, or when I could read about it, then we talk a lot, and then we had phone calls, and then like we'd have chats about things, and like he's just an interesting guy. Like he's just amazing. And there's a lot of these people who are great writers, and people just see them as writers. When you've got to remember, they've got these whole lives that are like fascinating. And if you look at them as somebody who are potential friends, then you build these relationships where you might get offered something, and it's like it's the same thing with me. Like for example, with you, where if I had something come up, then I'd think about you because I'm like, oh, I know that she's like, you know what I mean? So it always helps if you build a relationship without needing anything. I think that's what helped me get relationship.
Yeah, so you get into the relationship like just for the sake of getting to know that person and hoping that you can bring value to them too, not just doing it for the sake of getting a leg up. Yeah, no, that makes total sense to me, and I love the idea because I like talking to people and making friends, so that resonates with me for sure. So 7 months on the platform. You started January 2020. And you've obviously seen a ton of success, as I keep unbelievably stating again. How do you plan to kind of keep the momentum going?
I think it's something that always kind of worries me is that what about if it's just like when I just had that one big hit, am I just a fluke? Am I just a one-hit wonder? And then I had a second hit. It's like, maybe I'm just a two-hit wonder. But now I think getting into Forge and getting into Better Humans and things like that, getting editorship is giving me more confidence. So to try and keep up the momentum, the main thing I'm going to do is make sure I'm writing about things which I actually care about and not trying to lose my way, because if you look at all of the top writers of Medium, they've got different styles. They don't sound the same. They're very good at who they are. And that's what I'm trying to make sure I do. I don't try to become like Nicholas, or I don't try to become I, or I don't try to become Tim, because they can do them better than I can do them. But nobody can be as good as me at being me.
Yeah.
And even if my articles don't take off, I'm still building an audience and a consistency where people know what to expect from me, and that will help me in the future.
Yeah. Do you ever plan to take your audience off Medium somewhere? So I know you've got your Substack, and I found you on LinkedIn and stuff. But what are your like sort of post Medium, off Medium plans?
So I'm trying to grow that out at the moment. So I just crossed 5K followers today, and that was kind of the target for myself. Because I didn't want to try and do too many things at once. So now that I've got to the 5K, now I'm looking, okay, how can I expand? How can I do other things? So I'm hopefully building my website today or tomorrow. And the idea of that is just to have a presence off Medium as well. And I'm looking at Instagram because for my own friendship group and the people I know off Medium, that's the most popular social network. And I think it's the one that I can connect with people the best on. And then I've got LinkedIn and Twitter. So what I'm trying to do is not be everywhere at once, because then I'm nowhere at once in a way. So if I can sort of build it out slowly, and then eventually, if I can build this audience off Medium and build it on Medium, to then write a book or go into online courses. But to me, that's a long way in the future. I want to have a big body of work behind me before that.
Okay, yeah. So focusing on Medium, sort of building out your email or your website at some point soonish, now that you've hit your 5K, congrats again.
Yeah.
And in the longer term, courses, books, more along those lines. Yeah. So, I mean, you've seen Medium only this year, so there have been so many changes. I'm sure you're aware prior to that.
Yeah.
But now that you've seen it and you've been on here for over half a year, if somebody was brand new to Medium today, what would you say? Like, this is the best part of writing on Medium, and this is the worst part.
I think the best part of writing, and it's something which might be like controversial a bit, is the curation.
Yeah.
Because some people absolutely hate it, but if I didn't get curated early on, nobody would have read my stuff. Like, I'd have no way to build an audience. Because when I started writing, I didn't tell anybody that I was doing it. So like my family knew that was it. So I would have had 3 or 4 views.
Yeah.
But because of curation, because they have these people who are going through and then promoting writing they think is good, it allows you to go much faster. And I don't know anywhere else on the internet that could do something like that.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Curation
as a pro. Sorry, yeah, just summarizing, curation as a pro, which is, you're right, a very controversial opinion among certain circles.
Yeah. So I think unpredictability is kind of a pro in it, because it keeps things exciting, but then it also can be quite frustrating because you just don't know how something's going to go. So like some of my last stories, like one will have 50,000 views and then one will have 500 views, and you don't get that, like, you don't know what's going to happen ever. So you can get these massive wins. And I think I kind of prefer this way of, I have like some that do okay and then some that do amazing, rather than knowing every single thing is going to be okay. Because as a new writer, you're kind of stuck, right? Because it's a long time to build your audience. I think it's good as well. Like, they're changing it now, but the standardization of the website, because if you look at like websites that didn't work in the past, like MySpace, it's just annoying to look at because everyone has flashing images and it's all everywhere. Like, Medium being clean is a really good thing, and it's what made me read there in the first place. What else would I say for writers? I think people who've never done a WordPress blog, and I think I tried it 5 years ago, and it got 2 views in like ever, and it just got deleted. It's very hard to make your own website and to make your own blog, and I don't think there's another platform like Medium that's anywhere near as good.
Where you can just start writing. Yeah.
Yeah. I know people get frustrated, but it's still the best place to be, I think.
So unpredictability, I kind of agree, because it's kind of exciting. You never know. Every story has the potential to flop. Every story also has the potential to just absolutely take off. And especially with curation thrown in the mix, you never know when that's going to happen. Like, that's one of the things I personally really like about Medium is I wrote something over a year ago, and then this month I had a totally unexpected spike of views in that. So yeah, it's that unpredictability that I really like about it as well.
Yeah.
And like you said, controversial that you like it. Sorry, go ahead.
I think another good point is that if you're trying to build your own newsletter in Substack or whatever, and you're trying to get it paid, so people are paying like $5 just for you, I think that's quite hard to sell. Like, I'm not sure I'm comfortable yet with saying to people, pay $5 just for my articles. Whereas in Medium, you can build the audience because people can read a lot of your work and you get paid for it. And if they like you, then they can follow a newsletter. So it's a great lead generation as well. Yeah.
No, is there anything you have to say that's negative about Medium?
I think this one thing was, it's the double-edged sword of unpredictability, because you don't know what's going on sometimes. It can be quite frustrating when you think you've written something that's amazing, and then like, oh, it got 10 views. So I think they're making that slightly clearer now, and I can see like the last couple of days, like Ed Williams has posted something about how they're trying to change that. But sometimes just not knowing what's happening or when things are changing, and it's kind of a surprise. But that's just the way of any tech company. They're iterating, they're adapting. It's just when it's working for you, they're like, oh no, it's changed.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I can definitely empathize. Medium has had so many huge, like, I remember I started writing before curation even existed. And when that started happening, I was so thrown. Because this was a platform that I had already started relying on, and I thought I had it figured out. And they just throw wrench after wrench after wrench in it. Every time you think you finally got it figured out, then no, they change everything. But yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. It is, you're right, a double-edged sword of like, you never know when something can do well, but also you can't predict anything, and they're kind of opaque about their processes, like most tech companies, but hard to predict. I wanted to actually circle, because you're an editor, and I think a lot of people have experience of writing on Medium themselves. Far fewer people know what it's like to edit. So I wanted to ask, you see both worlds. How does being an editor for Entrepreneur's Handbook change or like affect or influence your writing at all?
I think it's changed it quite a lot. And I think what I'd advise people as well is you can be an editor in a way, because if you make friends on the platform or you get other people, you read other people's work, what you're essentially doing is editing, right? So you can still get that experience and like build it up. But what I see is like maybe 100 stories a week, or like tons of stories every week. And what you start seeing is that people don't try, like, it's the where people aren't standing out because they're doing something which is very, like, it doesn't have a personality to it. Or it's one of the other big things is where it's the like preachiness and lectury kind of style of tone, which is very off-putting, because like, I don't want like my readers and like Entrepreneur's Handbook readers to be reading something from somebody telling them, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this, because why should we listen to you? And I think that's the part that I think a lot of writers might not understand, is that if you want to tell people what to do, you've got to say why they should listen to you. Like, what's your credibility? And even then, even if you have the credibility, still think about the way you're saying it. Still say it in a way that's working with somebody, not like telling them what to do, not demanding things. And it's something I've noticed quite a lot in like some of the pieces we get in. And another big thing is the power of the introductions, because when you're reading so many stories, that introduction is so important, because it sets the tone. Because if I'm bored in your introduction, then I'm expecting to be bored for the rest of the piece. And it's the same thing when anybody reads your articles. If the introduction doesn't capture them, they've got a million other articles they could read. So that first 100 words, you've got to capture the reader. They've got to be interested. You've got to say, like, we've had people, for example, who've got amazing credentials, they're CEOs of huge companies, but they don't mention that until the conclusion. Whereas if you put that right at the top, then I'm like, oh wow, like, you've got this, like, this could be really interesting. And you've got to think, like, put the information at the top that you want people to know, because if it's in the third or fourth paragraph, they may never see it. And that's one of the things we kind of change in people's articles when we edit.
Yeah, because I was thinking, like, your biggest month so far on Medium was the month that you became editor of Entrepreneur's Handbook, and I was wondering, you must see so much writing come through. It must give you a really good grasp of what's good and what's bad, and what's likely to succeed and what's likely to flop. I know you were saying one of the writers that you edit, his name's Alan.
Alan Trapaludis.
Is that how you say his last name? And
he's incredible.
Yeah, and you were saying, I think, that he wrote a super successful story about deleting lines of code. Do you know the story I'm talking about? Yeah, absolutely true. And then you saw and then you saw like the next week 20 different versions of that super successful story, and you're like, why do people do this? That ship has already sailed. That successful story was already written. But yeah. All right. Well, I want to leave people with one last question before I open the gates to people who want to ask you anything they want. What's been the thing that you're most proud of, like your highlight? Not just getting $4,000 in your bank account, which must have been an incredible feeling, but overall, your whole journey. What's the highlight?
I think the highlight is like some of the stories I've written, especially ones to do with the mindfulness ones. Where I think one I wrote, was it this month? It got featured by Medium, but it was why you should give yourself time rather than be patient. And I think those kind of stories, because it's where I really think that I'm giving good piece of advice to people, and it's really helping. And I feel like the comments I get back from those pieces, that's what makes me the most proud, because I can see I've actually impacted someone's life. Because I think sometimes people don't realize that, because it's all in the internet. But if you can write something well, and you can write something which is going to help people, then you're actually going to like have an effect on their life. You could actually make their life better.
Yeah, that's an incredible feeling.
Yeah, and it's, if I can do more of that, then I think the success like will follow from that.
Yeah, actual valuable insights that people will hopefully change some small part of their lives. Yeah, no, that's really true.
You make someone's day better, you're going to be successful.
Yeah. All right. I will say thank you so much for your time, Amar. It's been amazing. And I will now open the floor for anybody to ask any questions they want. I can see some have been posted in the chat already. First question. First, Ravi says he loves your article so much that he kind of feels like he knows your entire biography. That's so nice. A lot of people are curious about your nationality. Obviously, from the accent, you're British. You said you're from London, right?
Yeah, so my parents are originally from Punjab, but they both moved over when they were kids. So I've been born and raised in England. I've been to India several times. Okay.
Somebody asks, Kundnani asks, what advice you would give to new writers who are just starting today?
Yes, I think what I'd say is just read a lot. So really kind of follow the guys who are doing well, the people who are, and it's the thing of, you can see which ones are doing well, so you can go to a publication and you can see the most read. So if you see the publication the most read and you can read those kind of stories, you have an idea of what people are finding useful. And you're still trying to think about it in that way, where try and work out what readers are finding interesting and what readers are finding useful, and write those stories.
Because, but then apply like your own, because
apply your own stories there. But it's a kind of thinking of like, what do readers seem to like reading? Readers seem to like reading things that are very clear, things that have got stories. And nobody has the same style, but you can start seeing that this guy is really interesting. This girl is like got amazing storytelling throughout her articles. And you're not trying to copy them, but you can tell what quality is, because if people are consistently getting a lot of views, you can blame virality, you can blame like luck or whatever, but there's only so much luck you can have. Sooner or later, there's got to be some skill behind that.
Alexander Winifred asks, are the subjects or topics, oh, hang on, he clarifies his question. What are the best topics to write about on Medium? Love, relationship, does entrepreneur-related content work well? I guess it's hard to say for everyone, but in your personal experience, have you found any topics that consistently do particularly well or particularly poorly?
I think any subject, well, I think there's a few subjects that do particularly well. So for example, I never write about like relationships or family or anything like that, because that's just an area that I'm not going to write about. But there's people who write about that all the time and do amazing, like Sean, for example, or like Dan Moore. So you've got to write about what people are interested in, but also what you're interested in. Don't just try and write about something just because people are want to read that, because it's going to show that you're doing it for the sake of it. So in terms of the topics that do well in Medium, check out the popular list. You can see on there, like there's top articles. So often it will be like relationships, things to do with self-improvement, programming, political articles do pretty well, I think, as well.
Yeah.
But just have a look around, and if you see an article that's got 20,000 claps or 10,000 claps, you know that it's going to have some audience, and if people are reading that, then they're likely to want other stuff like that.
So tap into that existing audience. Yeah, because it seems like the topics that you personally write about are very, not overdone, but there's so much content out there on them. But what makes yours so different is you're not just pulling together from other areas on the internet. You're drawing from, like, you have a very deep personal connection to mindfulness. And that's where you're personally drawing from. Because I know I've seen so many of your stories are like, the title reads like, oh, anybody could have written this. But then you get into it and it's very clear that only you, specifically you with your background, your experiences, could have written that story. And I think that's like, titles are so much of it, but your content is so specific to your experiences. And I think, like, from my perspective, that's one of the things that makes your writing phenomenal. One person wants to know, Michael Love wants to ask what you were doing before this. You're still working at your day job, right?
Still working, yeah. Yeah. I'm just working all hours instead now. So for me, that's one of the parts is finding the balance, because so I work my day job, and the going into lockdown has given me a bit more time than I would have had otherwise. But I'm going to go back to like normal working commute, normal working day afterwards. So one of my challenges at the moment is how do I make myself more efficient, such that I can still like write in the evenings, and because I'm not going to be able to write at lunch or like the hour before work or the hour after work anymore. So my day job is in technical consulting. So it's like I work with like large companies. It's in like the CRM space.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, it's so weird because your day job is like, from my perspective, so unrelated to what you write about. Like I'm sure you pull stuff in from one or the other, but like mindfulness, consultancy, totally different.
For me, I did it on purpose. I want to keep the kind of two worlds separate.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, two separate worlds. Yeah, I started recently mixing my personal life in more with my writing life, and it's had some kind of weird outcomes. One person wants to know, Unku Mohammed Zahari asks, how do you adapt to changes that unexpectedly occur on Medium? You know, I would be very interested to hear the answer to this, because my answer is I don't. It takes me time to just kind of get my balance again.
Yeah, I think it's just, so for me, there hasn't been anything too crazy, I think. So the new change coming in now is about publications changing. So for me, that works quite well, because in my day job, I do like design and stuff as well. So it means that when I create a profile, when I create a publication page, it kind of brings in some of my skills that I have elsewhere. So that's a change that might work out quite well for me, because a lot of other people who have publications won't have that background. So they might make something that kind of puts off readers. So I think it's also just remembering nothing is permanent. Like next month I could have a completely crap month. All my articles do terribly. So it's just, don't get angry about it, because you can't control it. It's the whole Stephen Covey circle of influence, circle of control, because there's no use getting worked up about changes of medium. It's the best thing to do is have your diversity, have like your different sources of income, because you don't want to be reliant on something that could change any moment.
Yeah, way to apply your writing lessons to this specific medium question. Some general interest I'm seeing around your writing process, specifically how much you write a week, how long it takes you to write an article, things like that. Bit back.
So I think like I've gone through different phases where sometimes I'm really organized and I do a plan and I can write it down, and then I do an edit and then it goes ahead. But it really depends. Like I'm not somebody like Tim, for example, who can just smash out an article in an hour.
This is Tim Denning, right? I'm
Denning,
sure
you'll
him on the Medium's popular list. He lives there.
Yeah.
I'm not bitter.
So at the moment, my writing style is I have a ton of headlines. So I've got loads of different headlines that I want to write.
Yeah.
And I kind of reorder them every now and again and see which one I'm going to write next. And I try to do it such that I don't have too many things that are too similar in a row, because then I've got a fresh perspective each time. And then I'll free write. So I write the article just off the top of my head. And then after that, I'll go into and look for some research and see if there's anything which I don't think I explained, or I need something to back up what I'm saying. So if I'm saying people do this, then I can't just like I've just made that up, right? So I need to check if what I'm saying actually makes sense. And what I'm doing now, I think that's kind of had a big effect as well, is I completely rewrite articles. So I write it once, and then section by section, I'll read it again, and then write it out again. Because then the second time round, my wording is so much better.
Really? That is so, I have never heard it. Well, I'm sure people do it, but it's so different from my process. That's wild. So you have just started like actually rewriting your entire story section by section.
Yeah, because I just found like I was doing stuff, and I think it's the process of trying to get the idea onto paper. So the first time you do it, it's not very good sometimes. So I do that.
Yeah.
I rewrite it. Then every single article I've done has been through somebody else before it gets published.
Okay.
So I actually use my little sister, who might be watching this. as like my first like grammar checker, and she kind of says, "Oh, this doesn't make sense." And it's good to use somebody you know in real life, because they can call you out if you're like being pretentious, or if you're saying something that doesn't sound right, because they can just be like, "Don't say that," and like she can just say that to me. And it's good to have friends who can as well, if you don't have a family member who can do that, because they know you well and they know, oh, you didn't mean to say that. Like you sound really this way if you do it that way. And then from there, so like this is why my stories take a long time. And after that, it might send it to another writer, so somebody else on Medium. But what I try to do is I never send another writer an article until I've done these steps already, because it's valuing their time.
Yeah. So you do your internal process, like just you personally rewriting, then goes through one of your family members, your little sister, bless her, she's probably unpaid. And then finally,
she's on Medium now too herself.
Okay.
So she's writing history articles. So you can catch her on a history of yesterday.
Oh yeah, I've just seen that publication coming up more and more now. It's really cool. Yeah, you send it out to another Medium writer to give it that final polish, but you don't send it to them until you're pretty sure it's like at the final stage it's vetted. That makes total sense. I wonder, can you actually see the comments as they're coming in? Because I mean, feel free to pick out your own questions.
Oh sure, yeah. Wait, should I start from the top? Okay. In your view, what was the biggest thing? What was the biggest thing that delivered me to success? I think there is this big factor of luck, where you need that little, you need to write stuff that people are interested in, but lots of people do that. So it's a necessary thing. It's not going to make you successful, but you need to write about something which people care about. Make sure that it's readable. Don't be preachy.
It's like a conversational tone.
Yeah. And then if you keep doing that, for me it happened early, but for somebody else, like for example, Sinem wrote for a long time before she had a big hit. And once she got that first big hit, she's just constantly churning out big hits, because she's improved. And once she's got that recognition, then people are realizing, oh wait, her stuff has always been good, we just didn't see it before.
Right.
Recommend for non-native writers. I think that's a tough one. So one of the things you can do is make sure, like I said myself, I always send it to somebody else, because I was born and raised in England, but I don't know about things, for example, where somebody will tell me you can't end a sentence with a preposition. I didn't know that. I've never had to think about that before. Like I don't know these little grammar tips and bits and pieces. I went to university in England, but I never really got trained on my writing in particular. So I think regardless of where you're from, just get somebody else to look at it, and you can get a friend to look at it. And between you, like you'll pick up on each other's mistakes. And if you can pair up with somebody in another part of the world, that can also help as well. So as you start getting a little bit of traction. And another thing is to say it out loud. Because if you say it out loud and record it, and then when you're listening back to it, it's like, oh, that doesn't really sound right. That's a good way as well, especially if you're non-native.
Yeah, that's my tip that people push back on the most. It's cringy. I hate doing it, but it's the thing that improves my writing the most in the shortest amount of time, is just reading it out loud, recording it if I can stand it, and then listening back to it. Oh, I hate it, but it does. It's so fast, and it really does work. Yeah.
More questions. Listicles get so much engagement. Why? I think people love numbers. So that's not a Medium thing. That's just a general internet thing, or it was even before the internet, right? Before, when there's books that came out before the internet was so big, or I think even in the olden times, or in like the Roman times, people had these things. Here are the 3 things, and it'll be like orated instead. And people like to know what they're getting. If you say there's going to be 6 points, there's going to be 4 points, they know, okay, this is what I'm going to get. Whereas if you've got a more vague title, then people are going to click, and it might not be they were expected. So it's that extra bit of information is what helps the schools do well. About psychological problems, yeah, definitely. If that's what you want to write about it. So Invisible Illness is a very good publication for that. So I can give a little shout out to Ryan Fan, who's great at helping new writers. He's an editor there. Just scrolling through, seeing if we can find any more.
Somebody asked about the tea I drink. I'm on a green tea with a citrus blend. That's me personally. I'm nearly done with it though.
How much words per day to write is for training? So I'd say forget about word count completely. Like I would never tell anybody you need to do this many words per day. Like I have days where I don't feel like writing at all, and I have other days where I can write really fast. I'd say the word count matters in Medium because it tells you how long of a read it is. So I don't want to make something that's too long a read or too short a read. So I usually 4 to 8 minutes, let's say. 4 is on the shorter side if it's more of a less deep piece, I guess, or a more biographical piece. But I strongly advise against this idea of write every day, or do this many words per day. Do it when works best for you. So if you can only write 1 day a week, and that's a good time for you, and that helps you write well, write 1 day a week. You don't need to rush. Like there's plenty of writers out there who are writing every single day, but they're not getting to it because they're stressed out, and it doesn't put them in a good place to write things that they in a way which is helpful for people.
Someone asked a question. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I really liked Unku asked again, how do you overcome fear when posting an article? As a new writer, I just posted my first story and I'm afraid my writing will not be viewed. How do you overcome this problem? I personally, that's something I still struggle with before I hit the publish button. I'm like, oh, is this going to be another failure? So I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yes, I think my first article, it wasn't very good, let's be honest. But I did it and it got curated, which is a nice bonus. But it got like 50 views. It was incredible. But what I realized is that the world didn't burn down. Like nothing happened. Nobody I got a few nice comments. So I'd say it doesn't matter if you get no views. Who cares? Nobody one of the good things if it doesn't get any views, nobody knows it doesn't get any views because nobody has seen it. So if it's something you're interested in and you think it adds value, then post it. And now I still get the fear of wait, have I done this edit right? Did I do this, or am I posting the right one? Because sometimes I have multiple versions, if I'm saving a draft before I send it to somebody else, or things like that. So I had that with my Forge article because I had it so many different times because it got edited so much. I wanted to see what my original one was. I was like, oh, have I posted the wrong one? But the worst case scenario, you just unlist it or you delete it.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have asked me before, is it okay to delete? And I'm like, I have deleted so much of my stuff, especially in the earlier days. I like you, I don't think had written really at all before coming on Medium, and there were a lot of kinks to work out in those early posts. So yeah, if I really agree with what you say. If you're confident in the subject and you're passionate about the value that you're giving, yeah, you shouldn't be afraid to hit that publish button. And if it doesn't get 50 views, you wallow in ignominy. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Just not being known. And that's I know how to write these words. I don't know how to say them.
It's worth saying some of the words out loud, right? Because we write about it all the time. But it's why you should read out your articles, I guess, right? Because then we get to learn how to say these words.
But then, don't be afraid to delete if 6 months down the line you're looking back and you're like, this is not an reflection of the quality that I know I can bring today. So there's both.
That's what I wrote about a little while ago about the 90% rule. Go through your own stories and think is this still who I am? Because sometimes you write something and it's who you were at that time, but now you don't really agree with what you've said. And if you just keep it up there, then you never know, because that might be the first article somebody reads of you, and that's the impression they're going to get of you. So you want to have some kind of consistency in who you are, because you just don't know, especially with curation. An article that you said you wrote a year ago is now going viral. So you just got to see. Just remember, if you delete an article, it's no big deal. Okay, Zuli is not moving for me, so I'm not sure if she's frozen or what's happening. or she's being a statue. Okay, so I'm going to carry on answering some questions while I can't hear Zulu. Okay, so it's happening for other readers as well. See, okay. She's left. Okay, so I can see you can all say she's frozen as well. I'm just going to carry on talking to fill the silence. Okay, do people who share curation rate in their articles, do people who share their curation rate include the articles that they deleted? Oh, so when I say my curation rate, I usually just use like the last 10 or so articles as my baseline, because it's difficult to go through every single story to check. That was Ella Pearson's question. Yeah, I can see there, Ravi. I've got a takeover. Let's see. What have we got? Do you have a writing structure format that you use for all of your articles? Do you mind sharing your routine? So I often do use subtitles in most of my articles, just because, like I said, I'm not a writer, but it's something I'm new to. So for me, having that subheading helps me to structure my article and kind of mark out roughly how much I'm going to put for each point. But for other people, they don't have any subtitles at all. So it really depends on your style of writing. So if you look at Nicholas Goke, for example, here's someone who can write an amazing article which is 5 minutes and has no subtitles, and he smashes it out. So Zuli's back again.
Sorry about that, everyone. Thanks for bearing with me. Carry on, Amar. You're doing a great job. You should just take over my channel.
What was I saying? So yeah, so in terms of the structure of an article, when you look at successful writers, they all have different things. Like not everybody follows the same one. So I think, say, one of the big points is you can mimic yourself on another writer, but don't think that's the only way to be successful. Because, like, you look at Tim Denning, Nicholas, Goke, Deji, all of these people, like Thomas Apong, they've all got different styles, but the one common thread is that they provide value. Their readers love their stuff, and they've got loyal readers because they're consistently giving things that their readers want to know. Okay. Do you want to pick a question?
Yeah, let's have a look. There was a lot of sass about my technical difficulties. So let me scroll up a bit. I don't know if you had a chance to answer. Do you have suggestions for improving writing, websites where I can write on random topics? This was Sheldon Cottrell and weirdly John Wick just before him, like the exact same question.
Oh, so one thing I use.
Sorry, I don't know how to get rid of that. There we go. Sorry. All over the place today.
So I use a few different things to help me, and I think the more I start writing, the less I kind of rely on them.
Okay.
So one is called the HemingwayApp.com. So I use that, and what it does, you chuck your article in there, and it gives you a reading score, and it tells you if your sentences are hard to read, or if there's like words which are redundant that you don't need anymore, or using like a pretentious word. So I think when I started at the beginning, sometimes my sentences would be too long. I'd use too many commas and too many semicolons and things like that. And you've got to remember, like, a lot of people are going to skim your article because they're not going to read the whole thing. So you want to make it as digestible as possible. Whereas if they're reading a sentence which is like 10 lines long, they're not going to be able to follow. Like, they're just going to, okay, I'm going to go back. That one's quite useful, I think. And it picks out those sentences which are worded a bit awkwardly. I use one called, what's it called? I think if you search for duplicate word finder, that kind of thing, because we all have our tics in the way we talk, where we use the same phrases a lot.
What's it called? Sorry, something word finder.
I can see if I can get another tab. Word analyzer tool. Online utility org.
Oh, found it. Yeah, I've never heard of that one. That's really interesting.
Because what I notice, especially in new writers, and we see this in the publication as well, is that they'll reuse the same phrases constantly. And it happens when we talk because we do the same phrases. I'm sure I've said interesting 1,000 times in this interview. But what that does is it highlights these words or phrases that you're using a lot. So then you can go back and change them, or see if you can re-edit that structure of that sentence to make it a bit more interesting, a bit more dynamic.
That's really good, because I know when I talk, I that's one of the pitfalls, I guess. Like when you're writing, the way you talk is I think I overuse the word absolutely, especially when I'm nervous. It's just my go-to response word. So yeah, that's really interesting for me to know. I love that. I had no idea that existed.
Website as well, which I use. Well, Grammarly is a good one as well.
The classic.
Yeah. There was one other website I used, but I can't remember anymore. So it can't be that important, surely.
Not a critical part of the writing habits. Great. Well, I think we're mostly caught up with the questions. A couple of people have asked about your #1 top ever performing article. So we'll ask that, and then I might have to go before I push my luck anymore with my internet. But yeah, tell us about your best performing article, and if you can, any insights about why you think it did so well.
So I don't check my stats until the end of the month. So I never know what I've been earning until the 1st of September.
Yeah.
So I know it's between 2 or 3 of them. So even in July last year, most of the earnings came from stories from the previous months. So I think my most performing article is going to be, it's called Ikigai, the most misunderstood way to happiness. And I think why it did so well is that, one, it was it had the contradiction, because some people have heard of Ikigai, but to me they've heard of it in the wrong way. They've heard a westernized version, which isn't really accurate of the way that it's actually lived in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And because of my karate background, because of being to Japan, and just being fascinated by this, I've read about it, and I thought that I could put it in a way which is much more beneficial to people. And it's kind of the advice which I think it could really make a difference to people's lives. And I think that's why I did so well. And also because I was so passionate about it, I think that came across in the article itself.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you read it, you can really tell that I really believe in what I'm saying. And it gives you that adrenaline, I guess, as you read it, because you can see I haven't just plucked this off the internet and reworded and paraphrased it. This is something which is a lived experience, and I use examples from my life for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, if anybody hasn't read it, the article, I've posted it in the chat along with the other websites you mentioned. I really recommend reading it. It is your best performing. If it is your best performing, it is their 100% well deserved, because it was such a great story. I am going to wrap up there, but before I go, I just want to say, Amar, it's been so cool to have this live interview. You are so nice to talk to, and I feel like hopefully this has been really valuable for other people who are starting their medium journeys now, or still trying to sort of get their foot in the door. The things that I thought were the most interesting about what you were saying this whole time were your main takeaways, which go against a lot of the typical advice on Medium, which is why they were so cool. So first, don't rush. I could not believe that your top story, or the one that got your foot in the door, took 2 weeks to write. That's amazing. That's really cool. And hopefully it makes people feel better about not writing or publishing every day, because I know that's a lot to ask. And if you can't do that, that doesn't mean you're not going to be successful. I like that you talk a lot about less about the subjects that perform well. It's not just self-help or emotions or anything like that, but you talk more about the things that are interesting to you intrinsically as a person and weaving in your own sort of life experiences. And that's a way to prove that you're A, qualified to talk about these things, B, why people should listen to you, and C, I think you're absolutely right. That passion really comes through in your writing. And 3, this isn't super counterintuitive, but your point about making relationships, being friendly, not just trying to sort of use people to climb to the top, but go into the relationship thinking about what you can bring them to. How can you make this relationship valuable for both of you, especially on Medium, where who you know can be really helpful in getting your stories read and more widely distributed.
I think I always feel guilty when somebody helps me. I'm like, oh, I need to help them back. I need to do something.
That is very British of you, I think.
Yeah. Why are they being so nice? I need to do something.
Yeah, gotta even the score. And I want to finish off by saying, I know people worry a lot about like follower count on here. I want to point out you got $4,000, which is, by the way, more than I've ever earned in a month. And I've got nearly 3 times as many followers. Followers right now, they're a good metric, but that's not the thing that makes you successful on this platform. It's good writing that you care about, that you believe in, and that you ultimately hit that publish button on, whether it's takes you a day or 2 weeks to write. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. Again, this has been super fun for me, and hopefully everyone's had a great time, and hopefully you have too.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And it was great as well, the interaction with the people in the live chat there.
Yeah, I love the live chat. I felt like I couldn't decide where to look. Anyway, yeah, if you have any more questions for me or Amar, feel free to email me and I'll pass on anything burning to you directly via email. And yeah, I'll look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Bye, everyone. Bye, Amar.